What I'm going to share with you over the next couple of weeks has been something that's been cooking inside of me for a few years now. And the deeper I've gone into this exploration, the more it's becoming alive to me that in order for us to really heal, in order for us to shift, in order for us to change things and make a difference, it's going to take both the divine masculine and the divine feminine. For me, what it meant was having to be honest with myself and understand, like, what happened to the divine feminine? Like, what happened to it? Like, I don't get it. Like, we're brought up in this culture where, like, obviously the divine masculine, it's there in every single thing that we look at. And yet, in my mind, like, that's an incomplete story. And so what I'm going to share with you today is my journey. And I hope that you take from it what feels good, and please leave the rest if it doesn't feel good. But I want to begin this journey because, in my opinion, the only way that we start to heal this, the only thing that we really start to shift things, the only way to make things actually happen is let's start having a conversation. And when I say having a conversation, I don't mean just me. I don't mean just men. I mean men and women having a conversation. Like, how do we do this together? Can we really bring in the divine feminine and the divine masculine and bring them together and heal each other and then create a pretty sacred place? For me, the answer is absolutely. Do I think that's going to be easy? No. Do I think that there might be some frustration? Yeah. Do I think there might be some anger? Yeah. But I'm willing to start the conversation and I'm willing to listen because I think ultimately that's what we need to do, is we need to listen and hear what's going on. So, this idea of she who is silenced, reclaiming the divine voice of women. Just some thoughts about that, and that is, first of all, when I start this conversation, I just want you to know that this is the start of the process, first of all. And again, this conversation needs to take place between all of us, and that I honestly don't claim to have all the answers. I can't possibly have all the answers, but I know where all the answers are. Do you know where all the answers are? There you go. That's where all our answers are. Everybody in this room can take part of this conversation. Every single person in this room. So, and by the way, as I started doing some research, all of a sudden, when I got done with it, I looked at it and I said, this needs to be a class. And as I was talking to my wife, she said, yeah, Michael, this really should be a class. So I'm going to kind of, a little bit, apologize in advance for the talk today. If this is your first time here, I'm just going to tell you this isn't what I normally do. But I think it was necessary, and I think my hope and prayer is that you'll get that and you'll understand it as I start to go through it. So I thought a really fun place to start was, because it's so riveting to talk about, is the difference between polytheism and monotheism and where the whole thing got started. So if we look back at way back when, way back when, what did we have? We had animism. What's animism? Animism is acknowledging the divine in all things. It's not just human beings. It's actually the earth. It's actually the animals. It's actually in every living thing you acknowledge the divinity in all of it. That's what animism is. It's nature-based spirituality. In that process, there was the goddess figurine, suggest a reverence of the divine feminine. It was there, like a bunch, all over the place. And we'll talk about more of that in just a minute. And then we reverence the earth, nature. It was hugely important. And animals and cycles. All of the things that when we get outside of here and we walk out and look, that's what's happening. And we were connected to all of it. And we were connected to each other. And we were connected to our divinity. That, in a sense, was called paganism, for those of you that didn't know. And long before the churches and the creeds, humanity looked to the stars and the rivers and the trees. That's what we did. And the moon. And we saw the divine reflected in all things, everything, right? People gave it names, and they created stones, and they created temples, and they had names like Isis and Thor and Brigid and Pan and all kinds of names. But the whole thing was about this connection with each other and connection with everything around us. That's what they were. They were pagans. Healers, seers, warriors, all of the stuff. Poets. Their gods had faces in the skies. They worshiped different aspects of it, and each one of them had a different name. Their spirituality was different. They had seasonal festivals. They had sacred groves. Everything to them was sacred. Everything was it. Life and death were not enemies, but actually they were companions because they understood that it was a cycle. That's how they did it. Okay? Then from about 3000 to 1000 BC, religion started to become a little bit on the scene, but we still had polytheism. It flourishes in Egypt, Mesopotamia, in India, and in Greece. The gods and the goddesses symbolized a natural force and human traits, and there was a complex pantheons emerged. So we started to have some deviations from this slowly. You got to remember, nothing moves quickly. It's moving slowly. And so we had all these deities, a lot of deities. A deity of fertility, a deity for the sun. Myths explained about creation and morality, all these things. And then from about 1500 to about 1000 BC, we started coming up with this idea, and I'm not sure why, but we started to focus more on this idea of one main God without denying the others. So we started the slight shift, right? And Akhenaten's worship of Aten, in Egypt. So in other words, in Egypt, they had gods and goddesses and everything else like that. And they said, wait a minute, we just want to try worshiping just one for a minute and see how that works. It didn't work so well, right? Early Israelites' religion emphasized Yahweh among other gods. So now we're starting to get into this idea of just one God, if you will. And then true monotheism emergence from 1000 to 500 BC. So Judaism asserts one God. So now, I don't know how, but what happened is we went from all of these deities, all of this stuff, and we started going, we're going to shrink it down to just one. Zoroastrianism introduced dualism, but centers on one deity, right? And the Upanishads explored the divine oneness of Brahman. So these are the things that are happening from 1000 to 500 BC. Okay, and then what? Well, and then we start going from 500 BC to 700 AD. And this is where Judaism starts to mature, and Christianity and Islam arise. Strict monotheism starts to develop. Polytheism begins to decline in dominant cultures. So as you can see, it takes a couple of thousand years, but what happens is humanity starts to shift in terms of the way that we understand stuff. And so what happens is we have from 700 until now, monotheism again expands via empires, the Roman Empire, colonialism happens, and through missionary work. They sent out all the people across all the lands and started wiping out anything that had anything to do with any kind of worship other than one God. And that's what happened. Polytheism is suppressed in many religions. Hinduism and indigenous beliefs persist. So at least those two kind of hung out for a little bit. They kept doing it, right? So then we get into the modern era where monotheism is still dominant, but pluralism is growing. So it's kind of like we're starting to, it's the way that I look at it is we started to shift from like over here, and then the pendulum went way over here, and it's kind of like we're starting to shift back here slowly. But it is starting to happen. It is starting to happen. Interest in Hinduism, Buddhism, neo-paganism is coming back, and we've got a blend that's starting to happen across the world. And that's what's starting to happen. And as I thought about it, I was like, well, I was kind of curious. What about the feminine goddesses? Who were they? So I just wanted to give you an overview. Prehistorically, Venus figurines, fertility symbols like Venus of Willendorf show up. Then we go into ancient Egypt, Isis, Hathor, Nut, Maut. And then we look at Mesopotamia. And some of these names I'm going to screw up. I don't know how to pronounce them. Inanna, and then Tiamat, and I can't even pronounce that one. But then we go into, well, does anybody else know it? Can anyone else pronounce it? I was just curious if somebody knew. Okay, thank you. Greece, Gaia, Demeter, Minoan, Mother Goddess, right? India, Shakti, Durga, Kali, Saraswati, Lakshmi, Tibet, green Tara, white Tara, and then again, one I can't pronounce. China, Kuan Yin, thank you. Sorry about that, right? Japan, again, these are names I'm not going to be able to pronounce, but you can see that what's happening is all over the world, there's all these goddesses, all over the world, and we're worshiping them. And they were temples built out of some of them. In fact, there was temples for Isis that existed for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years because they worshiped the goddess Isis. Down in Australia, the rainbow serpent, and then the indigenous Americas, Pachamama, and then the others, white buffalo woman. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stories. And then pre-Christian, I never even heard of this one. Brigid? I'm not familiar with that one. Brigid, okay, cool. So you've got other ones as well. And the summary of the themes, the cultures, they were about creation, they were about fertility, they were about wisdom and compassion, they were about power and protection, and they were nature's cycles and rebirth. And they were beautiful, and they were worshipped all over the world until they weren't. And so this was happening, and there was a part of me that's like what happened? Like, I don't fully understand it. And so I did a deeper dive, and I found something I'd never heard of, and it was fascinating to me. How many people have heard about the Code of Hamarabi? Okay, so there's a few of you. Well, good for you, because this was news to me. So here's what happens, what is it? So in Babylonian, a legal code in 1754 BC. It was created by King Hammurabi. He's hanging out of Mesopotamia, right? And it was actually inscribed on stone and clay tablets because, after all, if it's in stone and clay tablets, then it's got to be real, right? I mean, it has to be if it shows up like that. And you can see pictures. This is the real thing. And you can also see the second picture is actually the god handing the stones down to Hammurabi, right? So, well, if God handed him the stones, then we better take this stuff pretty seriously, after all, right? And so there's another picture of it where you can see all of the laws that are inscribed on the rock. Yeah. The key features of the code. There's 282 laws covering family, business, and property and crime. An eye for an eye, punishment should fit the crime, and different rules for different social classes. This was a huge thing. This is where we finally started to go, okay, well, some people are better and bigger and more off than other people. And that's where this whole thing started. Divine authority. Hammurabi claimed that the laws were given by the god Shamash. And the stone depicts him receiving the authority from the divine. Again, so we better take this stuff seriously, right? What did it say about the treatment of women in this code? Patriarchal. Men controlled family life, and we are going to define it. And that's the way it's going to be, because after all, God handed us these templates, and we better follow them. Adultery was punished more harshly for women, and some rights, dowry, inheritance, and fair treatment in divorce, right? The impact, an early attempt to codify justice and order. So this is the first crack that we as a humanity decided, well, we're going to start organizing it, and this is what it's going to look like, even though it had nothing to do with the way things had been done prior to that. Nothing, right? It influenced later legal system, reveals gender class and moral norms of ancient Mesopotamia. And this is where we come up with the social structure. So early on, priests held most of the power. And as this thing expanded, then what happened, the secular kings were at the top of the social pyramid. Priests became advisors who communicated with the guards. The upper class had government official and scribes. The middle class had soldiers and workers like craftsmen, merchants, civil servants, and women who were finally educated, or priestesses. The lower class, the farmers, laborers, and women who did household work, weaving, enslaved people, and they had no rights. This is where all this started. All of it was right here. And again, this was around 1700 BC, right? Which is around the same time another big part of our history was getting started, and I already mentioned it, and that was the Abrahamic religions. So if we look at these three religions, We've got back in 2000 to 1000 BC is when Abraham started talking to God and has a talk with God or Yahweh, and seen as the spiritual father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And then from 1300 to 1000, we start off with the formation of Judaism, and Moses leads the Exodus and receives the Torah, and the first temple is built in Jerusalem under King Solomon. Now we go into the first century. The first century is what? When Jesus is born. And all of a sudden we start talking about Christianity, right? So Jesus of Nazareth is crucified, followers proclaim him to be the Messiah, the New Testament is written, Christianity spreads across the Roman Empire. And then finally in 600 is where Islam begins. So the Prophet Muhammad receives this message from God, and then the teachings compile into the Quran. This is where it starts to get real interesting, and in some ways I just think sad. And when you start to compare the key differences between what happened pre-Abrahamic and then post or during Abrahamic law, then you see the differences between the view of God, many gods versus one God. The feminine is really centered and embodied in the culture itself, whereas after the fact, it was really just symbolic and hardly talked about at all. And then, of course, connection to nature was huge way back when, and then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, well, whatever. And then the path to the sacred was, well, I mean, seriously, they just let it go, right? And then, so then we have the path to the sacred, which used to be rituals and myths and being outside in nature, and now it comes down to learning, and now we're going into our head, into our heart, and we're getting away from our heart, right? And then the purpose for life. Right? And then if you start, now we're going to start going deeper into the Christianity. And why do I focus on Christianity? Well, I don't know, but there was something going on at that time called, the Roman Empire, which controlled most of the world at that time. And so it kind of became a big deal. And so when Christianity started to form, if you think about this, right in the beginning of the Bible, and when we talk about the downfall of man, what starts the downfall of man? To show you how goofy this gets. What starts it? And what does she do? What does she do? Right. The Bible says the downfall of all mankind started when a woman bit an apple from the tree of knowledge. How's that for a start? Are you kidding me? Seriously? Really? And think about how many times that story has been told. Right out of the gate. Right out of the gate. You're portrayed as being this evil thing, and what kind of a message does that send to women, right? Right. So Christianity starts to form, well, Judaism is forming, the Christianity is a sect off of Judaism. In the Bible, the first 4 books are the Torah, which is the original Jewish books. And so what happens is Jesus comes, Jesus died, Jesus gets crucified, and for 400 years, basically, Christianity is kind of loose. In other words, they've got stuff all over the place that's going on with Christianity. There is no one way to do it. It's all over the board. So they have different teachings, they have different beliefs, they have a whole bunch of stuff, right? Then finally, what happens is the Council of Nicaea. How many people have heard about the Council of Nicaea? Yeah, more people have heard about that. Yeah, so let's talk about the Council of Nicaea for a minute. So when was it? Well, it was in 325 CE in basically modern-day Turkey, right? It was the first ecumenical, which means a gathering of all of the different churches at that time. It was the first time they brought them all together, and they say, hey, what are we doing here? Who called it? Well, at the time, it was the Emperor Constantine of Rome, and he had just converted to becoming a Christian. So he was like, hey, I'm in charge of this thing called the Roman Empire. There's a lot of going on right now historically, and some of it's not so good. I think I want to kind of start to basically rein it in. So let's have this thing and bring together these people and try to codify or try to make everything the same. Because what I'm seeing, like in this part of Europe, they may do it like this. Over here, it's a little bit different. Over here, it's a little bit different. Over here, it's a little bit different. And so it was being done differently throughout the country and the world. And he's saying like, nah, that's no good. We can't do that. So what happened is they bring everybody together, and basically, who participated in it? Who participated in the Council of Nicaea? 300 bishops. 300 bishops, right. And so they came together and they made this thing they called the Nyine Creed. And what it was is they all agreed, all right, tell you what, from this moment forward, here's what we are going to basically preach in every single church across the world. This is what it's going to sound like. We believe in one God. We believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. We believe that Jesus was for us and our salvation. He was incarnated by the Holy Spirit and given birth by Virgin Mary. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. On the third day, he rose again. He ascended into heaven. He's seated right next to the Father. He will come again. We believe in the Holy Spirit. We believe in the only holy Catholic and apostolic church. And we acknowledge the baptism and the forgiveness for the sins. That was it. That was it. And so they wrote this, and then they said, okay, go out and spread the word. And remember, it was the Roman Empire. And so they had control of most of the world. And they also said, by the way, not only do we want you to go out and spread that, but we also want you to get rid of anything else that doesn't even come close to looking like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so guess what they did? Oh, the holy wars, all the stuff started happening, that anything that didn't resemble the Nyine Creed across the world. That's what they did, right? And they did it in a lot of different ways. And it completely destroyed, for the most part, the divine feminine and the goddesses and systematically removed them. And in some cases, it was done by violence and death. And that's how it was done, right? And then all of a sudden, they came up with the name heretic. That's where the word heretic came into play. So in other words, if you didn't follow the Nyine Creed, then you are considered a heretic. And you don't want to be known as a heretic. That is not a good thing for you to be known as, right? So, what was the impact on women? Could you imagine? Well, let's talk about that. Formal leadership roles for women were largely cut off. I'm sorry, my contacts are acting up a little bit. The feminine leaders were basically downplayed. The monastic life became the only way that they could really participate. And then basically the teachings for the divine feminine were pretty much gone, removed from the entire thing. And that's what happened. Now that I got everybody so happy, I think that, I think for me it's just really cathartic to go through this process and to be looking at this stuff and to understand it. And if anything, it's this understanding, what I believe is true, is that the divine feminine is absolutely as powerful, and in some cases way more powerful, than the divine masculine. And we're going to get into it next week. We're going to have a celebration, so it'll be a lot lighter, a lot more joy, a lot more happiness. And so we're going to have a celebration, but the week after that, I'm going to do part 2 of this, because part 2 of this gets to be really beautiful. And we're going to talk about the Book of Mary. How many know that Mary wrote a book? How many people know that the Catholic Church knew about the book and hid it from everybody? How many people knew that, the secret got out of the bag in 1893 because there was something called the Berlin Codex, and what happened was there was an anthropologist in Egypt, and he found the Berlin Codex. What was the Berlin Codex? Basically, it was 66 pages of documents, and it had in it the Book of Mary, and they can prove it. And the Book of Mary, spoiler alert, is way different than the books that are currently in the Bible. A lot different. Not only is it different in terms of the message, in terms of the way you are to act and who and what we are, but it also said something that was, talk about heretical at the time. It actually said that Mary was Jesus' equal. Whoa. And actually Mary was called the apostle of apostles. Do you get it? And so in that book, there's actually a little back and forth between Mary and Peter, because Peter's going like, well, who do you think you are? And let me tell you something. Mary checks that like right now. She lets him know exactly who she is and what she means to Jesus. And so we're going to have those conversations. Yeah, take a deep breath. I just think it's a wonderful conversation to have. And I just want to begin the conversation. And like I said, I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers. But I think it's really good to take a look at this stuff and then just to realize it. And if anything, what I'm hoping it's doing is it's empowering all of us, so that we can see how critically important the divine feminine is in moving forward. We have to have it. We can't do it without it. And that doesn't mean that men need to run away and go bye-bye. No, we need both. But we need them to do this. That's what we need, right there. And in my mind, it's like, let's begin that process. Let's start having these conversations and figure out what that looks like. I really do believe that's what we're here to do, part of what we're here to do, one of many things we're here to do. Thank you.
Hey, it's Reverend Mike here. I just wanted to stop for a moment before you get on with your day, and thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It means the world to us, and I just wanted to let you know if there's anything that we can do to make your experience even better, please do not hesitate to reach out by going to our website. I also wanted to offer you the opportunity for us to get together and sit down so I could get to know you a little bit better and answer any questions that you have. I can either do that by either getting together in person, have a cup of coffee, or we can meet online via Zoom. If you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me at michael@courage2thrive.com. And lastly, if you find these messages are helping you, we would be tremendously grateful if you'd consider donating to the center. The best and the easiest way to do that is simple. Just go to our website. Again, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. Hope you're doing well. God bless, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye now.